Hi, welcome to this channel on magnetic energy, technology, principles, applications. So this video, of course, unconventional, is about like course corrections in our lives. And that could be like things that naturally occur or things that happen like from guides and everything. So one of the fundamental building blocks of the universe in this model is the torus. And I've talked about this many times. So when you have a torus that's counter-rotating, so the top and the bottom basically are counter-rotating, it has vortices that lead energy in and energy out. So the whole key of this is inflow and outflow energies. And conventional science has taken the difference in those charges and labeled them as polarities, which is fine. So we can say they're polarities. In this model, there are nearly an infinite variety of polarities because there's different resonance signatures in almost all polarities depending on the origin of the polarities, the spin rate, and all kinds of factors. So we have polarities, okay, that are working together, and vortices that are forming these toruses of counter-rotating energy from a subatomic quantum level all the way up to the galactic and universal level. And it's a fundamental building block of the universe. It's how energy transfers from dimension to dimension and everything. So at the center of the torus, as these vortices come together, you have this relatively neutral point of energy. Now that neutral point of energy is a gateway, it's a portal to interdimensional energy. It regulates and kind of, I guess you could say it kind of controls, but mostly like regulates and formulates like the connection of the vortices. And so there's a tremendous amount of attract energy of the incoming energy. So like energy from this dimension going into a higher dimension is attracted into that neutral point, and the energy from a higher dimension coming into this dimension is attracted into our dimension. So there's an outflow of the torus. So everything is an inflow and outflow, and that's really important. So now how does that apply to our lives? As human beings and as systems of this energy, like our incarnated bodies, and really it goes into our energy bodies too, but just for now, in our incarnated bodies, we are full of these toruses and of this energy that's coming and going from like inflow, outflow energy. If there is an imbalance in the system, there's pressure built up, because the whole point of that neutral gateway and that neutral energy in the middle of that torus is to regulate that energy and make sure that balance is attempted to be maintained, at least to some degree and within some period of time. And the pressure will build and build and build until it accomplishes that task, no matter what. Now, that's a monumentally huge problem on our planet right now because of nuclear pollution and all those things I've talked about. But in our daily lives, when we are at a low level of consciousness, like we are at this part of the cycle, we're in the low level of the cycle, and we function and we live primarily through our cerebral processes, our brains, our they would say our earthly self minds or our egos. So we live primarily through those mechanisms, through the ego and everything. And that tends to create polarities in our lives all over the place. I mean, there's so many different polarities that our brain and our low-level consciousness right now, we just create unlimited polarities, basically. So that polarities will create imbalances in the system that need to be corrected. And so they will automatically initiate corrective responses to balance out polarities in our lives. And people might call this karma or yin and yang or anything, but it's a very natural process, and it's extremely important because the energies have to maintain balance between dimensions. That's a fundamental like rule, if you want to say, of this particular type of model. So an example of this would be like if we are living too much focus on ourselves or on others, we will start to create imbalances in our energy field. And so then corrective actions will automatically initiate in our lives events, other things that will be attracted into our lives. And it could be accidents, it could be other people, it could be all kinds of different types of events that ultimately encourage us to balance out the polarities in our lives that are out of balance. So like, for example, if we're like super other focused, then all of a sudden you find yourself in situations that basically create the need for us to have more self-focus to balance out that energy. Or it could be the other way around. If we're super narcissistic and only focused on ourselves and we're not focusing on other people enough, then situations will come about that basically initiate us and prompt us and motivate us and compel us, and sometimes without any choice, to basically focus on other people, and so that balance out that energy. And a lot of times, so you think about everything we do as an inflow and outflow of energy, and making that energy balanced. And I mean, so it's everything down to like eating, it's meditating, it's energy and meditation. And then here's the thing: as we move into the ascension levels, if we're still at the beginning of, yes, we're still at the beginning. We're very much at the beginning. So we move more into our heart space, and we live from our heart energy centers. So one of the things our heart energy center does is it's very, very good at balancing energy. So it's neutral. It's a strong, relatively neutral field that balances the torus and the incoming and outgoing vortices around it very well. And so as we live more and more from that heart space, we naturally live more balanced lives that in turn create like energy flow, inflow, and outflow that are more equal. And then there's less need to have course corrections in our lives, either through universal processes and mechanisms or through higher beings and guides that will literally step in and correct the course of our lives if necessary. So you can imagine, if you start like thinking about your life and how you live, and look at things as an inflow and outflow of energy through you, and making sure you balance those things, and what we are focused on and what we are doing in terms of our like receiving energy, but the giving energy and all that kind of thing. You'll see that as we move more into our heart space, it becomes easier and more natural than when we're trying to live from the ego and the head. And so that's just the basic thing about this, that I'm hoping this gives you some kind of understanding of why life can totally suck sometimes, and why things can completely fall apart. And it seems like events are happening to us and around us, and that we are impacted by that through not necessarily any fault of our own, but that are changing the course of our lives and changing the direction of our lives. And then ultimately, they encourage us to have a different type of perspective on life and a different type of balance in our lives. So it's the universe functions this way, and it will do whatever is necessary to bring balance into the situation, so that we have an relatively equal amount of inflow and outflow energy in each area of our lives. And so, just so you know, we're not victims of anything. It's the universe really trying to make sure things are in balance. And that's super, super important. It's fundamental to how things work. And it also encourages us really ultimately to live through our heart centers, and then find that neutral balance, and then be able to live our lives more effectively and everything. So please send in any questions and comments that you have, and I'll see you again next time.